All right, who's ready for chapters 43 and 44 of Black Beauty by Anna Sewell? This is Miss Erin. I'm here at the Caribou Public Library. Thanks for joining us for our chapter book story time today. All right, so chapter 43 is called A Friend in Need. Here is our illustration. A Friend in Need. At last came the election day. There was no lack of work for Jerry and me. First came a stout, puffy gentleman with a carpet bag. He wanted to go to Bishopsgate Station. Then we were called by a party who wished to be taken to the Regent's Park. And next we were wanted in a side street where a timid, anxious old lady was waiting to be taken to the bank, where we had to stop and take her back again. And just as we had set her down, a red-faced gentleman with a handful of papers came running up out of breath. And before Jerry could get down, he had opened the door, popped himself in, and called out, "Bow Street Police Station, quick!" And so off we went with him. And when, after another turn or two, we came back, there was no other cab on the stand. Jerry put on my nose bag, for, as he said, we must eat when we can on such days as these. So munch away, Jack, and make the best of your time, old boy. I found I had a good feed of crushed oats wetted up with a little bran. This would be a treat any day, but was specially refreshing then. Jerry was so thoughtful and kind. What horse would not do his best for such a master? Then he took out one of Polly's meat pies, and standing near me, he began to eat it. The streets were very full, and the cabs with the candidates' colors on them were dashing about through the crowd, as if life and limb were of no consequence. We saw 2 people knocked down that day, and one was a woman. The horses were having a bad time of it, poor things. But the voters inside thought nothing of that. Many of them were half drunk, hurrahing out of the cab windows if their own party came by. It was the first election that I had seen, and I don't want to be in another, although I have heard things are better now. Jerry and I had not eaten many mouthfuls before a poor young woman carrying a heavy child came along the street. She was looking this way and that way and seemed quite bewildered. Presently, she made her way up to Jerry and asked if he could tell her the way to St. Thomas's Hospital and how far it was to get there. She had come from the country that morning, she said, in a market cart, and did not know about the election, was quite a stranger in London. She had got an order for the hospital for her little boy. The child was crying with a feeble, pining cry. Oh, here she is, talking with Jerry. Black Beauty's in the background. Poor little fellow, she said. He suffers a deal of pain. He is 4 years old and can't walk any more than a baby, but the doctor said that if I could get him into the hospital, he might get well. Pray, sir, how far is it, and which way is it? Why, missus, said Jerry, you can't get there walking through crowds like this. Why, it's 3 miles away, and that child is heavy. Yes, bless him, he is, but I'm strong, thank God, and if I know the way, I think I should get on somehow. Please tell me the way. You can't do it, said Jerry. You might be knocked down, and the child be run over. Now, look here. Just get into this cab, and I'll drive you safe to the hospital. Don't you see the rain is coming on? No, sir, no, I can't do that. Thank you. I only have just enough money to get back with. Please, just tell me the way. Look you here, missus, said Jerry. I got a wife and dear children at home, and I know a father's feelings. Now, get you into the cab. I'll take you there for nothing. I'd be ashamed of myself to let a woman and a sick child run a risk like that. Oh, heaven bless you, said the woman, and burst into tears. There, cheer up, my dear. I'll soon take you there. Come, let me put you inside. As Jerry went to open the door, 2 men with colors in their hats and buttonholes ran up, calling out, "Cab!" "Engaged," cried Jerry, but one of the men, pushing past the woman, sprang into the cab, followed by the other. Jerry looked as stern as a policeman. "This cab is already engaged, gentlemen, by that lady." "Lady," said one of them. "Oh, she can wait. Our business is very important. Besides, we were in first. That is our right, and we shall stay in." A droll smile came over Jerry's face as he shut the door upon them. "All right, gentlemen, pray stay in as long as it suits you. I can wait while you rest yourselves." And turning his back upon them, he walked up to the young woman who was standing near me. They'll soon be gone, he said, laughing. Don't trouble yourself, my dear. And they soon were gone. For when they understood Jerry's dodge, they got out, calling him all sorts of bad names and blustering about his number, and getting a summons. After this little stoppage, we were soon on our way to the hospital, going as much as possible through by streets. Jerry rang the great bell and helped the young woman out. Thank you 1,000 times, she said. I could never have gotten here alone. You're kindly welcome, and I hope that the dear child will soon be better. He watched her go in at the door, and gently he said to himself, Inasmuch as ye have done it to one of the least of these. Then he patted my neck, which was always his way when anything pleased him. The rain was coming down fast now, and just as we were leaving the hospital, the door opened again, and a porter called out, Cab! We stopped, and a lady came down the steps. Jerry seemed to know her at once. She put back her veil and said, Barker, Jeremiah Barker, is it you? I'm very glad to find you here. You are just the friend I want, for it is very difficult to get a cab in this part of London today. I shall be proud to serve you, ma'am. I am right glad I happened to be here. Where may I take you to, ma'am? To the Paddington station. And then, if we are in good time, I think we shall be, you shall tell me all about Mary and the children. We got to the station in good time, and being under shelter, the lady stood a good while talking to Jerry. I found that she had been Polly's mistress, and after many inquiries about her, she said, How do you find that the cab work suits you in winter? I know Mary was rather anxious about you last year. Yes, ma'am, she was. I had a bad cough. Oh, cough, it followed me quite into the warm weather. When I'm kept out late, she does worry herself a good deal. You see, ma'am, it is all hours and all weathers, and that does try a man's constitution. But I'm getting on pretty well, and I should feel quite lost if I had not horses to look after. I was brought up to it, and I'm afraid that I should not do so well at anything else. Well, Barker, she said, it would be a great pity that you should seriously risk your health in this work, not only for your own, but for Mary's and the children's sake. There are many places where good drivers or good grooms are wanted, and if ever you think you ought to give up this cab work, let me know. Then, sending some kind messages to Mary, she put something into his hand, saying, There is 5 shillings each for the 2 children. Mary will know how to spend it. Jerry thanked her and seemed much pleased, and turning out of the station, we at last reached home, and I, at least, was tired. Chapter 44, Old Captain and his Successor. Can you see how the cab in this picture has the opening in front here, and the driver is in the back. Captain and I were great friends. He was a good, noble old fellow, and he was very good company. I never thought that he would have to leave his home and go down the hill, but his turn came, and this is how it happened. I was not there, but I heard all about it. He and Jerry had taken a party to the great railway station over London Bridge, and were coming back, somewhere between the bridge and the monument, when Jerry saw a brewer's empty dray coming along, drawn by 2 powerful horses. The drayman was lashing his horses with his heavy whip. The dray was light, and they started off at a furious rate. The man had no control over them, and the street was full of traffic. One young girl was knocked down and run over, and the next moment they dashed up against our cab. Both the wheels were torn off, and the cab was thrown over. Captain was dragged down, the shafts were splintered, and one of them ran into his side. Jerry, too, was thrown, but was only bruised. Nobody could tell how he escaped. He always said 'twas a miracle. Here's a picture of the accident. The man going super fast and rolling into their cart or their carriage. When poor Captain was got up, he was found to be very much cut and knocked about. Jerry led him home gently, and a sad sight it was to see the blood soaking into his white coat and dropping from his side and shoulder. The drayman was proved to be very drunk and was fined, and the brewer had to pay damages to our master. But there was no one to pay damages to poor Captain. The farrier and Jerry did the best that they could to ease his pain and to make him comfortable. The fly had to be mended. For several days I did not go out, and Jerry earned nothing. The first time that we went to the stand after the accident, the governor came up to hear how Captain was. "He'll never get over it," said Jerry. "At least not for my work," so the farrier said this morning. "He says he may do for carting and that sort of work. It has put me out very much. Carting, indeed. I've seen what horses come to at that work around London. I only wish all the drunkards could be put in a lunatic asylum instead of being allowed to run foul of sober people. If they would break their own horses and smash their own carts, and lame their own horses, that would be their own affair. We might let them alone, but it seems to me that the innocent always suffer. And then they talk about compensation. You can't make compensation. There's all the trouble, the vexation, the loss of time, besides losing a good horse that's like an old friend. It's nonsense talking of compensation. If there's one devil that I should like to see in the bottomless pit more than another, it's a drink devil." "I say, Jerry," said the governor, "you are treading pretty hard on my toes, you know. I'm not so good as you are. More shame for me. I wish I was." "Well," said Jerry, "why don't you cut with it, governor? You are too good a man to be the slave of such a thing." "I am a great fool, Jerry, but I tried once for 2 days, and I thought I should have died. How did you do it?" "I had hard work at it for several weeks, you see. I never did get drunk, but I found that I was not my own master, and that when the craving came on, it was hard work to say no. I saw that one of us must knock under, the drink devil or Jerry Barker, and I said it should not be Jerry Barker, God helping me. But it was a struggle, and I wanted all the help that I could get, for till I tried to break the habit, I did not know how strong it was. But then Polly took such pains that I should have good food, and when the craving came on, she used to get a cup of coffee or some peppermint and read a bit in my book. And that was a help to me. Sometimes I had to say over and over to myself, get up, give up the drink and lose your soul, or give up the drink or lose your soul. Give up the drink or break Polly's heart. But thanks be to God, my dear wife, my chains were broken. For now, for 10 years, I have not tasted a drop, and I never wish for it." "I've a great mind to try at it," said Grant, "for 'tis a poor thing not to be one's own master." "Do, governor, do. You'll never repent it. And what a help it would be to some of the poor fellows in our rank if they saw you do without it. I know there's 2 or 3 that would like to keep out of that tavern if they could." At first, Captain seemed to do well, but he was a very old horse, and it was only a wonderful constitution and Jerry's care that had kept him up at the cab work so long. Now he broke down very much. The farrier said that he might mend enough to sell for a few pounds, but Jerry said no. A few pounds got by selling a good old servant into hard work was misery. Oh, and misery would canker all the rest of his money. And he thought the kindest thing that he could do for the fine old fellow would be to put a sure bullet through his heart. Then he would never suffer more, for he did not know where to find a kind master for the rest of his days. The day after this was decided, Harry took me to the forge for some new shoes. When I returned, Captain was gone. I and the family all felt it very much. Jerry had now to look out for another horse, and he soon heard of one through an acquaintance who was an undergroom in a nobleman's stables. He was a valuable young horse, but had run away, smashed into another carriage, flung his lordship out, and so cut and blemished himself that he was no longer fit for a gentleman's stables, and the coachman had orders to look round and sell him as well as he could. "I can do with high spirits," said Jerry, "if a horse is not vicious or hard-mouthed." "There's not a bit of vice in him," said the man. "His mouth is very tender, and I think myself that was the cause of the accident. You see, he had just been clipped, and the weather was bad. He had had not enough exercise. When he did go out, he was as full of spring as a balloon. Our governor, the coachman I mean, had him harnessed in as tight and strong as he could, with the martingale and the bearing rein, a very sharp curb, and the reins put in at the bottom bar. It is my belief that it made the horse mad, being tender in the mouth and so full of spirit." "Likely enough, I'll come and see him," said Jerry. The next day, Hotspur, that was his name, came home. He was a fine brown horse without a white hair in him, as tall as Captain, with a very handsome head, and only 5 years old. I gave him a friendly greeting by way of good fellowship, but did not ask him any questions. The first night, he was very restless. Instead of lying down, he kept jerking his halter rope up and down through the ring and knocking the block about against the manager so that I could not sleep. However, the next day, after 5 or 6 hours in a cab, he came in quiet and sensible. Jerry patted and talked to him a great deal, and very soon they understood each other. And Jerry said that with an easy bit and plenty of work, he would be as gentle as a lamb, and that it was an ill wind that blew nobody good, for if his lordship had lost 100-guinea favourite, the cabman had gained a good horse, with all his strength in him. Hotspur thought it was a great come-down to be a cab horse, and was disgusted at standing in the rank, but he confessed to me at the end of the week that an easy mouth and a free head made up for a great deal, and after all, the work was not so degrading as having one's head and tail fastened to each other at the saddle. In fact, he settled in very well, and Jerry liked him very much. Well, that is it for today. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.